Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're going to completely revolutionize how you tackle quadratic equations. Rather than just relying on brute force and hoping for the best, we're going to build a mental toolkit together. This is going to help you instantly choose the absolute most efficient solving method for literally any situation you encounter.
Let's be real for a second. Even if you're totally comfortable with math, seeing a messy, jumbled algebraic equation can make you freeze for a split second. The immediate question isn't usually whether you can solve it, but how do you solve it the fastest? Do you try to factor it, complete the square, or do you just throw the whole formula at it and hope it sticks?
So, here's our roadmap for today. We'll start by meeting the quadratic equation itself, then we'll check out our first choice tool, factoring. After that, we're diving into the AC method, completing the square, and the ultimate heavy-duty sledgehammer, the quadratic formula. Finally, we'll wrap up by mastering how to choose your absolute best strategy.
Section 1. Meet the quadratic equation. Now, to build a truly solid toolkit, we've got to make sure we're starting with the exact same foundational materials.
Before you even think about picking up a tool, remember the golden rule of quadratics. You absolutely must arrange your terms in standard form. That means writing them in descending order of power, starting with your x squared term, then your x term, and finally your constant. And crucially, set the whole shebang equal to 0. If you skip this step, literally none of our tools are going to work.
Moving on to Section 2, First Choice Factoring. All right, so your equation is perfectly arranged. Now it's time to pull out our first, and honestly, usually the most efficient tool. I like to call it the trusty wrench of factoring.
I know it's super common to want to avoid factoring, especially when that leading a coefficient isn't a neat, easy number 1. But, as math educator Brian McLogan points out, if a quadratic is factorable, this is hands down your fastest and easiest line of attack. It just gives you incredible speed and accuracy.
Section 3. The AC method explained. So what exactly do we do when factoring isn't immediately obvious? When the guess and check method feels way too tricky, we rely on a highly structured process.
This brilliantly shows how we can take a potentially complex algorithm and break it down into 5 simple, totally manageable steps. First up, always check for a greatest common factor. Then, you multiply your A and C terms together. The real magic happens when you find 2 factors of that product that perfectly add up to your middle B term. Once you split that middle term, you just factor by grouping.
What's really awesome about this approach is how it organizes the chaos. Let's say our A times C product is 30, and our middle term is 11. By just listing out the factors of 30 in a simple table, it completely removes the guesswork. You instantly spot that 5 and 6 are the exact numbers you need. They multiply to 30 and add up perfectly to 11. It's like a math puzzle solving itself.
Watch how beautifully this builds. Once you've successfully split that middle term and factored by grouping, your original intimidating equation is totally transformed. It now just looks like a neat product of 2 simple binomials, all set equal to 0.
At this point, the crucial step is applying what we call the zero product property. The logic here is actually pretty elegant. If 2 things multiply together to equal 0, well, one of those things simply must be 0. By setting each individual bracket to 0, you can use basic inverse operations to effortlessly find your final answers for x.
Section 4. Completing the square. But as we all know, math doesn't always hand us friendly numbers. So what happens when our trusty wrench fails us and the numbers absolutely refuse to factor cleanly?
Take a really stubborn equation, like x squared plus 10x minus 33. You literally can't find 2 nice integers that multiply to negative 33 and add up to 10. It's just not going to happen. This is exactly where we need to reach for a more specialized tool in our kit. Think of it like a ratcheting screwdriver, completing the square.
Now, you definitely don't want to use this tool for everything. It's perfect for very specific conditions. You want to use completing the square when your A value is 1, and this is the absolutely crucial part when your middle B term is an even number. Why? Well, because the very next step requires us to divide that number by 2, and we really want to avoid creating messy fractions if we can help it.
The core rule here is such a clever workaround. By taking exactly half of that middle term and squaring it, you're artificially creating a perfect square trinomial. You deliberately mold the equation into something that can be factored down into a binomial squared, which lets you solve it simply by taking the square root of both sides. It's brilliant.
Section 5. The sledgehammer, also known as the quadratic formula.
Sometimes, though, you're faced with an equation so incredibly messy and stubborn that neither basic factoring nor completing the square is going to comfortably budget. Enter the sledgehammer. The quadratic formula might look pretty heavy, and it definitely requires a bit more physical effort to write out. But as McLogan noted, it's essentially just a plug-and-chug method. It is completely foolproof, and it is guaranteed to work every single time, no matter how ugly those numbers get.
Here it is in all its glory. As long as you have your equation in standard form and you carefully plug your a, b, and c values right into their rightful places in this formula, being super careful with those negative signs, by the way, you will always break through to the correct answer.
But you really want to deploy this heavy-duty formula strategically. Swing the sledgehammer specifically when factoring is a total nightmare, when your b term is odd, which makes completing the square a mess of fractions, or when the coefficients themselves are ugly, decimal-ridden, or just way too massive to process mentally.
Oh, and here is a fantastic pro-tip shortcut for you before you swing that sledgehammer. Look specifically at the discriminant. That's just the b squared minus 4ac part, sitting right there under the square root. If that value turns out to be negative, you know immediately there are no real solutions. It saves you from doing all the rest of the math, which is a rare, beautiful gift in algebra, right?
Section 6. Choosing your strategy. Okay, we've reviewed all the tools in the box. Now let's synthesize this into a clear, reliable mental flowchart that you can easily pull up during your next exam or tough homework problem.
Here is the ultimate hierarchy. Step 1. Always attempt to factor first. It's by far the fastest. Use the AC method if you need some structure. Step 2. If it absolutely won't factor, check that middle term. If b is even, grab your ratcheting screwdriver and complete the square. Step 3. If the numbers are terrible, odd, or fractional, don't even waste your time. Just pull out the quadratic formula sledgehammer. By treating these methods as specific tools for specific jobs, you completely eliminate the panic of staring at a blank page. You replace it with a rock-solid, structured decision-making process.
But hey, regardless of the tool you decide to pick from your shiny new toolbox, always remember our golden rule. First, rearrange your equation into standard form, set it equal to 0, and then get to work. It's amazing how beautifully structured the entire workflow becomes when you just set it up correctly right from the start.
We've definitely covered a lot of ground today. Now that you have this structured toolbox and a crystal clear hierarchy for when to use each method, I want you to think about your own approach. The next time you face down a stubborn quadratic equation, are you going to reach for the finesse of the trusty wrench, or are you ready to just swing the sledgehammer? Thanks so much for joining me in this explainer, and I can't wait to explore more topics with you next time.